Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Going to cover some news and some travel updates, a little bit about immigration, and to give you some of the details about what's allowed, what's not allowed. A little bit of my thoughts and predictions about the future through the rest of the year. Anyway, we have we're in the typhoon season still. That's about to end, but typhoons can come anytime. What you call hurricanes back in the U.S., different parts of the world. And this is Typhoon Quinta. Philippines has a category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And this reached level 3 in some areas. Came in up in Luzon area, Bicol area. They come in off the Pacific on the right side of the screen, and they usually move north, but this one went right across the that area and caused damage, of course. There's a map there that shows the Bicol region of Luzon, and this typhoon. I think there was 1 or 2 deaths so far reported. It's moved off to the west, and it's gaining speed in the warm waters there, and it's going to hit Vietnam here in the coming day or two. Uh, we have a number of typhoons through typhoon season, about from June through November, and many of them go north. They come into the Philippine Area of Responsibility, kind of a odd rectangular box around the Philippines where we track it, give it a different name. And in this case, there was a couple of boats or ships that were sunk, I believe. There was 12 or so missing seamen, fishermen. So we sure hope the best for them. Winds and rain, of course, cause flooding and damage, and there are some pictures online, but I don't have access to those right now. A little bit of good news here. Government allows foreigners with investors visa to enter the PH. Now, you don't just show up. You can't just fly in the Philippines with money and say, I'm an investor, let me in. You have to go to a Philippine embassy in your country or country near you and apply for the investors. Convince them that you are an investor. I'm not sure what that will require, but you may require to show some contacts and money in your bank, those types of things, I would presume. Uh, the average person can't walk in the Philippine embassy and get that visa. Anyway, at the present time, here at the end, almost at the end of October 2020, tourist visas still are not allowed. Now there is some discussions ongoing. I'll get into that here just a little bit. Bloomberg, the famous financial newspaper, put out an article. Somebody sent it to me that said government allows foreigners to enter the Philippines starting in November. Well, that was inaccurate. They did not specify it was investors visa. I'll get into the specifics about who can come and who can't here in just a little bit with the list, the official list. And here's a little bit of that article that came out. The entry of these foreigner nationals to the country, however, is subject to conditions. They must have a valid existing visa at the time of entry and must likewise have pre-booked accredited quarantine facility. So you have to take the appropriate, have the right documents and take the appropriate actions. The next item in the news is the retirement visas are on hold over security concerns, and many of you have already heard about this. I've withheld reporting on it for a couple days, waiting for some clarification. There are some issues with the number of Chinese coming in on, very young Chinese in their 30s coming in on these retirement visas. Now, my question is, why don't they just target the Chinese side of this instead of everybody that's in this system? Anyway, the country's lax policies on immigration, allegedly fueled by corporate practices, illegal activities, mainly linked to the POGOs. The Philippine offshore gaming operators have allowed up to 4 million Chinese to enter the country. And this is especially alarming, especially in the context of China's continued occupation of the Philippine territories in the West Philippine Sea and the destruction of our marine resources. Anyway, there are a number of issues. The Communist Party and the NPA, the armed wing of the Communist Party in the Philippines, is an issue, ongoing issue, and it's different parts of the Philippines. So obviously they are very concerned about if what the purposes of the Chinese coming in. Now, please don't use the comments to bash Chinese. I've been to China about 12 years ago, met some very, very, very friendly and helpful Chinese. I've met very intelligent, helpful, friendly Chinese in the USA and in my travels, and love the Chinese people just like I love the Philippine people. There is corruption there. I experienced some at the Philippine airport, or not the Philippine airport, the Beijing airport in China 15 years ago. I was shaken down for the total sum of about 15 US dollars, less than that, by a couple of guys who claimed they wanted to help me and took me down a little alley, little hallway with nobody else around, and demanded a tip. And I gave them 100 yuan, whatever it was at that time, less than $15, and was on my merry way. Anyway, I told them, you're corrupt and you're giving China a bad reputation. And they said yes, and I went on my way anyway. I decided not to try to fight back against them. It wasn't a physical confrontation, but it could have gotten to that, and I was tempted. I was tempted to stand my ground, but I decided I probably wouldn't blend into the Chinese population very, very easily, very quickly. And I read later that the Chinese mafia controls the airport there, so probably a good idea not to get involved in that. Anyway, here's some information that's interesting to all of us, I think. The return order on Friday suspended the granting of retirement visas after several senators raised concerns. There's 28,000 Chinese retirees, some of whom were only in their 30s. Now, this information is pretty interesting. The Koreans are second as far as retirees here, 14,200. And let's see, Indians, 6,100, Taiwanese, almost 5,000, Japanese, 4,000, Americans, 3,700, Hong Kongers, 1,870, British, 1,600, Germans, 800, Australians, 750. So that's interesting, though, and that's those on retirement visas. Now here's the official list off the Bureau of Immigration Facebook page, and they've got websites, Facebook pages. Temporary arrival, travel restrictions. So who's allowed in to enter the Filipinos are foreign spouse and minor children Filipinos. But there again, you used to be able to just show up with a marriage certificate. Cannot do that anymore. People were printing out fake marriage certificates. So you need to go to a Philippine embassy in your country and obtain a marriage visa, basically, to travel here. And children with special needs, regardless of age, of Filipinos, foreign parent of minor Filipinos, foreign parent of Filipino children with special needs, accredited foreign government and international organization officials and their dependents, foreign airline crew members, foreign seafarers with 9C visa. And here's a more specific list of the particular visas that you can enter in on. The 13 series allows you to come in. All those series. Number 2, the RA 7919 visa, and you can go down and read through that if you want. Temporary resident visa relative to Section 13 of CA 613 as amended. You can go back and read through all that information if you like. I definitely suggest that you stay in touch with your nearest Philippine embassy because rules can change quickly. Going forward or going backwards can be more strict or adjusted to allow more people in. And if you fit under any of those categories, there are additional requirements, and you should contact your airline to see, because they will have additional information as well, the airline that you're going to fly in on. You must have a valid existing visa at the time of entry, of course, pre-booked accredited quarantine facility at a hotel that's approved, and you can get that information from the airline and or the Department of Health and or the Department of Tourism in the Philippines, and a pre-booked COVID-19 testing provider, and you can do that online, probably with through the airline site. And subject to, this is the killer though, subject to the maximum capacity of inbound passengers. And the Philippines is only set up to handle so many people each and every day. A couple months ago it was only about 400 people, and they've increased that to I think a couple thousand now, but still a couple thousand isn't very many people to process through your system to test for the virus and quarantine you, all those types of things. Now, some of you have asked me if you can have your Philippine girlfriend, fiance, wife fly out of the Philippines, and there are rules. You can't just, Filipinos can't just get on a plane and leave. There are restrictions. Temporary departure travel restrictions. Who's allowed? Only the following shall be allowed to exit the Philippines: foreign nationals, overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, permanent visa holders, students enrolled abroad, and participants accredited in exchange visitor programs. So that doesn't that cuts out a lot of people. That cuts out girlfriends. I just read yesterday they're going to start letting, they're again OFWs, construction workers to leave and go overseas. And I think if nurses for many months they would not allow doctors or nurses to leave, they felt that they were needed here in the Philippines. So doctors and nurses that had jobs overseas, the Philippines said, no, you can't leave. You have to stay in the Philippines, and then it was up to them whether they were going to take a job in the Philippines. And so that is changing on a weekly basis. So hopefully in the coming month or two, you will be allowed to get your Filipina friend off to see you in your foreign land. And if they fit in that category, they are their requirements for outbound Filipinos. You need a confirmed round-trip ticket. Of course, if you're an OFW, I don't think you would need a round-trip ticket because you're going to be working overseas. You need travel and health insurance to cover travel disruptions and hospitalizations. And I don't know the details about that, whether the Philippine government, whether PhilHealth is offering it. I don't know the details. The Philippine websites would have more information about that. You need a BI, Bureau of Immigration declaration acknowledging the risk involved in traveling, including risk of delay in their return trip. And then you needed a negative antigen test taken within 24 hours of your departure. So there are requirements there. Now, there is a little bit of good news. Tourism is starting to expand. I don't think they're getting many domestic tourists, Filipino tourists in the areas, but they're allowing more resorts, hotels to open. I think hotels are now allowed to open many places up to 100% even though they don't have customers. November 1st coming up, there are a number of areas are going to stay under GCQ, which is more restrictive, but they still allow more businesses to open. GCQ would be Batangas, I think it's part of the Manila area, Iloilo City, Bacolod City, a couple of other cities are still under GCQ. Most of the country is under modified GCQ, which is more lenient. And there again, the LGUs, the local government agencies, set their own rules. So it depends on what area you're in and how well they enforce those types of rules. There are a number of politicians in office who want to open up tourism more quickly, and Governor Garcia on Cebu province is one of those, and she is pushing for more tourism. Bentine Island, I was up there I think in January. Very nice tourist site, one of the most visited tourist areas in the world. On the very north, it's an island off the north end of Cebu Island, and their the airport was closed to planes except for small private planes when I was up there. But they're extending the runway, and that will be open soon, either the end of this year or beginning next year, I believe. So up to about 60 passenger prop jet planes will be able to fly in there, which will be nice. And anyway, I think in the next day or two, they're going to bring about 60 people up there and do some video about this is how tourism is going to be in the near future. Can you get around? Are you locked into one area? If that's the case, I don't think many people will go. If you have some freedom to roam and to see the various beaches, to rent a motorbike, travel around and have a good time, I think more people will go. But like many of you say, if the restrictions remain, no reason to go. And you'll have to wear the face mask, face shield. I'm not sure about the little what I think is useless air ionizer around your neck. And as stated here, she says that everyone, regardless of age, can visit the tourist destinations on Cebu Province. Now, Cebu Province is everything except Cebu City. Cebu City is a separate political entity, and it's ruled by Mayor, presently Mayor Labella, who has more strict requirements. So I'm not sure if you'd have trouble leaving Cebu City or not. Watched a clip yesterday. He was scolding a Canadian who he found. He was walking around, I think, park in Independencia Park downtown area, and come across different people, including this Canadian. He was they had him sitting on the ground, and he's asking him, where are you from? How long have you been here? 4 years. You obey Canadian laws when you're in Canada. You obey Philippine laws when you're in Philippines. We're not going to jail you, because he didn't have a quarantine pass to be out. We're not going to jail you, but you will be lectured. So that was like I said, each LGU, local government agency, unit, can set their own rules, so that creates obvious problems. She also stated tourists should not be given a hard time by requiring them with many documentary travel requirements. Amen. Let's do it. Get on with the program here. Now, there's much more information. There's many more scientists and doctors coming out against the various lockdowns, understanding that they are doing much more harm than they are good, and lockdowns really don't work if you look at all the data. And here's a little bit of a hint of things to come as well. Entry of foreigners, a work in progress. Proposal to allow more foreigners to enter the Philippines is still a work in progress, because the government has to consider various factors, including the number of travelers the country could accept during the holidays. And one of my predictions there, I hear more and more talk about letting more Filipinos off W's. Of course, a lot of people want to travel, see their families during the holidays if they can get vacation. Will that include more foreigners, and not just the foreign investors? We'll have to wait and see. I have found that things happen very quickly when somebody, an agency head or government person who has authority to make decisions, just like this, shutting down the retirement visas, instead of doing it, warning, doing it gradually and targeting it at the issue at hand. For instance, the Chinese, the young Chinese who are coming here under retirement visas, they just hit everybody with this out of the blue, no warning, just stop it dead cold. And as I predicted before, I think over time, over the coming year, many countries will come up will change their visa systems. They will come up with different visa systems, different costs, Many countries will be looking for ways to increase their income off of the tourist system, off the visa system, and it could become more expensive to travel and tour and live in other countries. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Many of the airlines, even Qantas, I was going to book a flight on Qantas a couple of months ago back to the USA for a trip, and I put that off indefinitely. But I read the other day that they are getting ready to lay off thousands of people. So, you know, in booking flights ahead, you don't know what condition those airlines are going to be in. Are they going to be flying into the airport near you, or will you have to drive quite a ways to get to the airport that they're servicing? If the U.S. airlines have talked about cutting out a lot of the smaller airports. And Qantas there again, if I would book a flight a few months out, I don't know if those flights will be available. I've talked to one of my foreign friends, and he said all his friends had their flights canceled. This was a couple of months ago, in the last few months. And so they just gave up. They're just going to extend here as long as they can, wait till things get more normal, and that is an option. But anything, traveling in other countries will be more restrictive, apparently. And those countries who make it easier to travel into the country and to enjoy yourself when they're in those countries will reap the rewards of that. Those countries who make it more difficult, more expensive, more restrictive, they will lose out. They will lose out in the long run and the short run. So anyway, your thoughts, your comments, thumbs up in the video sure helps the algorithms with YouTube to promote the videos. Safe travels, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.